What's up guys, David here and welcome to the Fit Pro Daily. This week we're going to do things a little bit different. Instead of talking about generating leads and how to find clients for your fitness business, what we're going to look at is what actually goes into a program. What is it that keeps clients keep coming back over and over again, week on week, month on month, year on year in your business. And we're going to start this week off with a guest interview. We're going to invite Ash Burleigh onto the podcast to share his thoughts on what goes into a great program, either online or for face-to-face. Now, if you don't know who Ash is, Ash set up PT Distinction Ninja. This is the part where they create everything that you need to get set up inside PT Distinction, so you don't need to spend hours and hours creating it. They'll create it all for you. Anyway, enough of setting up this intro. Let's dive straight into today's live interview. Hey guys, and welcome to today's guest interview. Today we've got Ash Burleigh on all the way from PTD Ninja. If you're not sure what that is, I'm guessing Ash will go into more detail as we go through this episode. But today I kind of want to share with you an insight into actually creating a program for your fitness business. I know Ash, most of his clients are online focused, and I know we're more gym focused. But at the same time, we need to understand, and a lot of people get confused when it comes to online as well, you don't have to just do Zoom workouts or come into your gym isn't just a workout and a meal plan. A lot more goes into this to get this client, this new client, to turn them into a long-term client. So Ash, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
No worries. Okay, so we start them off usually by asking, how did you get started in the fitness industry yourself?
Well, me personally, my background's actually as an adventure coach to start off with. So many moons ago, I started off in adventure, coaching venture athletes. So like for kayaking, whitewater kayaking, rock climbing, that kind of thing. And as I was doing that, my dad, he runs his own business, still does. He's very overweight. He weighed about 23 stones at the time, and he's about 6'2", 6'3" tall. So quite a big chap. And he got diagnosed with angina, and he needed to lose weight. And the doctor said, "Look, you've got to lose some weight. You've got to change your lifestyle. You've got to reduce your stress levels." And he came to me and said, "Look, can you help me do it?" Even though I wasn't at the time a PT, but what I was studying as well when it came to athlete training and adventure, there's kind of a bit of my background was in there. So I went to go and help him out. We worked with him for about a year and a half, maybe. And during that time, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed what I was doing. So I thought, whilst I'm doing it, I might as well train as well to become a PT. And that's kind of how my start in personal training got about. And my dad did really well, actually. He got down to just under 16 stone. And gym floor, and I went straight into setting up my own studio, and we had our own studio for a while. We then opened another studio up in the same kind of area, and it kind of grew from there. From that, we went into hybrid training because we kind of realized that which we'll talk about today anyway, but realistically, I think to have the best possible results for your clients, you do have to have a kind of hybrid element there. Just training somebody 2-3 times a week inside the gym and doing nothing else isn't really the most optimal way to build a program for our clients and get the best results for them. So we moved into that. As that kind of developed from there, I split off to do more online, while my business partner, Adi, at the time, he focused on the gym side of it and the hybrid side of it. And I kind of went with the online business from there, and it kind of grew from that side of it. So that's kind of how I started off.
Yeah. And now, so your business now is helping people who have a specific coaching app for their online clients, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we specialize in PT Distinction mainly. That is what we specialize in, setting up PT Distinction. And we use that to help any personal trainer basically either wants to move their business online, or maybe they've already got an online business and they want to find out how to best leverage PT Distinction to help grow their business and scale it. That's basically what we do.
Perfect. Yeah. So we'll talk about what you're doing more in the end, but just so anybody knows, if you download PT Distinction, that's the coaching app, but then Ash adds a load more content, automates everything, and makes it so much easier so you can do what you do best. But like I said, we'll get into that in the end. So today we're actually going to be talking about what actually goes into a great coaching program. So if anybody kind of knows a little bit about what we talk about, especially in the ecosystem side of things, the retention part is key. It's way more than just a workout, way more than just a meal plan or a Zoom session. So when you build these programs out, do you have them built in steps? Is there like 9 steps to a perfect program? Or is there certain modules you think that need to be put in to have a great program?
I think there's definitely steps that are involved. We generally find that we kind of have phases more than steps, if you like. So a certain phase of a program that leads into another phase of a program that then leads into like a third phase of the program. And we've actually found over time that these kind of 3 phases, if you like, are pretty consistent across all the best results-driven programs that we've found. And that's from anyone we've worked with. To give you a bit of a background on that, we've worked with now probably over 1,000 trainers, helping them set up PT Distinction, but they're not all just online trainers. A lot of these trainers we work with will have hybrid options. So they'll have their own gyms and studios and work inside there with clients in person. And we help set up a system to deliver their services both online and in person. And what we've done with that is that's allowed us to have data from not just these 1,000 businesses, but also roughly around 10,000 clients. So we get a really good idea now from this data of what actually works and what's consistently across all these different programs that allows them to get the best results possible, not just for the client, but also for the business owner too. Because what I think goes into a great program is not just about getting the clients the best results, it has to suit the business owner's goals as well and what they need to do. Like there's no point having a program that could get amazing results for your clients, but if you're working 24/7 with this one client, you're never going to scale your business. So there's other things you have to look at as well when it comes to creating the kind of perfect program, if you like, for online. But there's definitely an infrastructure, there's definitely a blueprint that has started to appear, which is split into kind of 3 phases of this program, which also we can dig deeper into and go through if you want to in a bit more detail.
No, it's quite interesting because we're seeing a lot of people now move into this type of thing where you're talking about building blocks. You have like a foundational thing, and then I'm guessing as they move through the program, they move on to another step. Are you talking about more about habit type of stuff, or is it lifestyle things that they need to get ticked off to win award and points, or how is it you actually structure it usually then?
So a lot of it is kind of like that. It's not just necessarily lifestyle. It's not just necessarily habits. It's not just necessarily counting calories or anything like that. It all, to be honest with you, comes down to there's 2 elements. First thing it comes down to is the actual client you want to work with. And I'm sure you guys will talk about it all the time. You need to understand who your ideal client is in order to have a good idea of what this blueprint is going to look like. And one of the first things we do when we work with anybody is try and dig as deep as possible into who their ideal client avatar is, because that's going to help tell us what kind of things we need to include in this program and how we can apply this to this particular blueprint. So for example, complete extremes here, but let's say if you're going to put a program together or a blueprint together of how you can deliver something to a particular type of client, what you deliver to somebody that wants to get stage ready for a competition is going to be completely different to something you want to deliver to Karen, who's got 6 kids and holding her time and has never counted calories in her life. They're completely different things. So how you approach those 2 programs is going to be completely different. What we tend to focus on is an approach which is kind of start slow and finish fast. And I think that's the same for any program that you should work on. So once we understand the client avatar and who they want to work with and how to best approach that, we then always apply this idea that we start slow and then we start finishing quicker. So results might not necessarily be as quick as possible to start off with, but it allows them to slowly understand what it is they need to do, what it is they need to implement, and kind of builds up the right habits. But I don't mean habits by, let's eat X amount of protein per day for the next 2 weeks. Well, I mean habits about the actual actions they're taking every single day. So to me, it's more important that they build up the habits of actually, okay, I need to check in with this client needs to check in every single day on their food diary, or this client needs to check in every single day on some activity they've done. Maybe it's 10,000 steps or something like that. It's just about getting used to actually checking in and being involved with that particular program more than anything else. So that's the 2 things we focus on. Firstly, who the client actually is, the client avatar, if you like. That gives us an idea of what we want to include in that program. And then we always apply the kind of start slow, finish fast approach to that that particular program and kind of break it down from there.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So let's talk about some of these topics. And you've had roughly 10,000 clients go through the program from, like, they say, about 1,000 Fit Pros. What are some of the most standout topics that we would need to consider if we are writing our own program? What are things that we know or you've seen that always get results, or things that we've not considered before that we should be included in our programs?
I think the first thing to look at is keeping it simple. People always talk about KISS, if you like, keep it simple, stupid, or keep it super simple, whichever way you want to call it. That's probably the most important thing. What I see happen quite a lot with any kind of program, whether this is in person or online, especially, this happens so much online, is that they have all this information. We as trainers, we know all this information that's out there, and we want to kind of give this to these clients straight away. So what we tend to do very quickly is go, here's all this information, but I want you to track this, download MyFitnessPal. I want you to track every single meal and calorie you have in there. I want you to tell me how much protein you're having. And then they'll say, okay, we're going to go and work out. Workouts is not too bad because of who we are as trainers, but you might work out 3 times a week from doing nothing beforehand. We try and get these clients to do so much so quickly. And I think that's what leads to the problem. I think when we're putting programs together, what we need to really think about doing is how we can start off small and slowly and stack these things up on top of each other so they can handle that. And nutrition is a good example of that, because the last thing you want to do with any kind of client, if they've never tracked before, is say, give them MyFitnessPal, because they might not even know what a calorie is. They might not know how to find calories inside the food. They might not know what proteins are. They might not know what carbohydrates are. Like, we have this assumption because we know, they know. And if we don't think they know, we try and tell them all this information straight away. And we know as teachers and coaches that that's not realistically how people are going to absorb that information. We need to build on these and build these building blocks. So what I would do as anybody approaching this is sit there and think, what is the minimum amount of information I can give that client in order to move them towards their goal? And that's the first thing I would look at. And that's why I like to say to people, start slow and finish fast in whatever it is you do, because it allows you to find out more about the client, and it also allows them to understand what it is they're about to do. I'll try and give you an example. So let's say we are doing calorie counting. Let's say that's something we want to do. We would like to get a client onto using MyFitnessPal to track some food in their program. So they're working within the gym 3 times a week. We want to track their meals outside of that and give them some calorie targets. If I was doing that personally, I wouldn't want to give my clients, as soon as I see them, some calorie targets to go and work on, because I know realistically they're probably not going to adhere to that long term over the program. So what I might do is say, okay, we're not even going to worry about downloading anything. We're just going to say, for the first week, all I want you to do is just take some photos of your food. We'll take some photos of the food, and then you'd ask them to give you some feedback and say, what do you think about this? Give you some feedback, and they can make some changes to it. I say, okay, cool. So now we're making some changes to our meals. We can talk about those different aspects of it. So we can talk about, well, this is actually a protein. This is actually a carbohydrate. We can have this conversation with the client. It doesn't take up too much time. This can be done online. It can be done in person with a client for 10 minutes at the end of a session. So there's easy ways you can do this. And then the following week, we might get them to, okay, let's focus on improving our breakfast. We'll get them to improve their breakfast. Week after that, we'll get them to improve their lunch. Week after that, we're going to improve their evening meal. Then at that point, now they're getting a good understanding of what their makeup of their meals are. We can actually then start getting to track it and say, okay, I'd like to just download this app, have a look around, have a play around with it. I just want you to go and track your meals, because at this point, they already know what these different macronutrients are. They know what they're looking for. They know how to make good choices because we've been having those conversations with them. And now they can start tracking that food. And we don't even give them targets at this point. Well, I wouldn't anyway, personally. I wouldn't give them targets. I'd just say, have a go at tracking it. Once they've done that for a week, they understand how to use the app. At that point, you can then start saying, well, actually, let's reverse this. Here's some calorie targets to work on. So instead of actually tracking your calories, I want you to use this to build out your meals based on everything we've learned over the past 4 weeks. To me, that's a much more systematic approach to helping somebody get a result. And we do the same thing when we're training people anyway. So, for example, you wouldn't go into the gym floor and, Joe Bloggs, who's done a little bit of training inside the gym, you're not going to ask them to go and do a snatch straight away. Like, you're going to build up to that over time, clearly, because you're just going to damage them and cause more damage than good. So we build up to that over time. We do that on the gym floor all the time as trainers, but we very rarely do it on the coaching side of it. We very rarely do it on the mindset side of it, or we very rarely do it on the nutrition side of it. And these programs that we write for people, They need to not just be about slowly progressing the workout in order to get this progressive overload to progress them somewhere. We have to do exactly the same thing in every aspect of that program in order to get them a result. So that's probably where I would start first. Break it right down, keep it nice and simple, and just make sure everything is methodical and built on top of each other slowly over time, and you'll get better adherence from your clients. But without a doubt, that's what we've seen work the best anyway over all these clients.
I have to agree with the onboarding part or the entry part to it. If anybody's running a short-term program, that's probably 8 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. If you're overcomplicating them right at the start, they're going to lose that trust and happiness that they had when they signed up to the program because they're just too overwhelmed. So if you're then hoping to keep them for a longer period of time, if you actually do follow your stats, you will notice if you overload somebody at the start on the onboarding part of it, you will lose them much quicker than if you onboarded them slowly throughout the course of the 8 weeks, that they would stay for quite a few months longer than if you just crammed it in all at the start. So keep it simple to begin, like you're saying. Just keep building on you.
Definitely. I mean, the famous saying is drinking from a fire hose. It's the same principle here. If you want someone to intake some, have some water and get hydrated, you'd probably give them a small glass of water to have a drink. You wouldn't open up a fire hose and fire it at the face. It's just not going to work. It's the same principle here. Like, you need to really just slow that down. You don't want to be trying to get your clients to drink from a fire hose with all this information, because in all honesty, we have to really ask ourselves as trainers that all this information is already out there. We live in a world full of information. All we're trying to do as trainers basically is help them decipher that information and find a way for them to apply that, and then we hold them accountable to that after. So it's the application of that information and then taking action on it, and then we help them become accountable to it. And we can't do that if we just give them all this information in one go, because really what they're paying us for, Google can do that. And that's why they're confused in the first place.
And that is the thing, especially like if somebody runs gyms like the type of gym I do, an over 30s gym where people don't usually come to the gym, it's hard enough for them to make that step into the gym and even start doing a session. Never mind saying you need to do 3 or 4 sessions a week, and then you need to be tracking your food, and then you need to do MyFitnessPal, then you need to use our booking app, and then you need to use Ash's app, and then you need to use this app, and you've got these emails and everything. They're like,
it's crazy.
So much stuff,
It's crazy.
So let's have a quick chat. We've talked about keeping it basic, onboarding them slowly and stuff. What's difference between your entry offer or your front-end offer program and the long-term program? Is there significant differences in what you need to be giving them between the programs themselves?
I would say so. Again, the main differences come down again to who your client is. It always comes down to that. Like, everything should be very client centric. It should be about the needs of your client. And I think if you can always remember that, this process will become a lot easier, a lot easier. And as you probably mentioned before, plenty of things when it comes to marketing and sales, like understanding your client is so important. So if you understand your client avatar there from that point of view, this should be relatively easy to do, and try to figure out what you need to include inside your programs. If you have a broad spectrum, it becomes a lot harder to do, because you have more clients you have to do, and you have to spend more time with each of your individual clients to find out what their needs are in order to get the best possible results for them. And that's the same for your kind of initial offer, like an 8-week program or 12-week program or something like that. And that will be the same if you move them into an ongoing membership program, which is probably one of the most common systems we tend to see, and we actually see the most success with. We generally see that the most successful program being a lead magnet or something like that, that brings them into an upfront offer, like an 8-week, 12-week, something on those lines. And then it moves them on to an ongoing subscription. That's probably the most common one we actually tend to see with the most success. And the most success comes from the people that have a really good understanding of who their niche is and who their actual client avatar is, from both the sales side of it, but also from the results side of it as well. Now, when it comes to the differences between the offers, the whole point of this 8-week offer or 12-week offer, this upfront offer, is to bring people into your membership, because that's the end goal. You're trying to get this reoccurring income from this membership. So that's always an important thing to remember, which means you do have to get a result in that 8-week program or that 12-week program. So for example, if you decide to use something like, say like a habit coaching program, where you give them one habit to work on every 2 to 3 weeks over that first 8 weeks or 12 weeks, you're not going to get huge changes in terms of moving them towards their goals for the most part. So I wouldn't really advise you going for that. You would still go a little bit faster, a bit like I mentioned earlier. Nice, simple onboarding process. Everything has a purpose and moves on to the next thing. So everything that you do today will then lead on nicely to the next day and to the next day and to the next day. So you still give them things to do. You still ask them to do changes. And over that first 4 weeks, as an example I gave earlier, by the end of that, they've already basically built their own kind of meal plans out themselves. They've created their own breakfasts to work on and lunches and dinners. Now they're tracking it and they have a good understanding of calories. That gives them some great results, but it also gives them a good understanding and a baseline of where they're going to go next. So at the end of that, you can then move them into this ongoing membership with having all this information there that you know about them already, and that can then dictate what happens next on this ongoing membership program. So with this ongoing membership program, that could be a subscription to your gym. Obviously, you can train people inside there. You can just program stuff to suit, and then you've obviously got the mindset side and the nutritional side of it. At that point with a membership, you can actually slow things down some more and you can break things down. You can look at more habits to work on. You can say to them, let's say if you got into calorie tracking, you could either allow them to carry on doing that and just have something simple for them to do so you can hold them accountable to it. Or what I personally like to do, what I've seen more results from, is actually breaking it down and bringing it back to the absolute basics. So like, okay, now we've had to go building these meals out. Now we understand how to get relatively precise results from counting calories, from doing X amount of workouts. Let's look at how we can actually start making bigger changes in your life. So let's focus on what kind of proteins we can have in and how much of that we need. Because the way I look at it and the way the most successful programs tend to be, it's not about setting you up where you can get the quickest results possible. It's actually about setting you up so you can continue doing this for the rest of your lives. I think that's the most important thing. And if we ask ourselves honestly, even us as PTs and trainers, are we really going to be pulling out MyFitnessPal and counting calories when you're 86-year-old? Like, we're not going to be doing it. And that's how we need to be setting up this next level. This next level needs to be about helping them understand what's going on in their lives. So like looking at how they're thinking about things, looking at the kind of foods and stuff they eat, and basically just holding them accountable. That's in essence all you're trying to do in this membership program. You're just trying to hold them accountable. And if you can hold them accountable, they will adhere to those different things. They'll adhere to the nutritional protocols we ask them to do. They'll adhere to whatever goal setting stuff we ask them to do. They'll adhere to whatever programs we ask them to do, because we're just there to hold them accountable. And I think that's the biggest difference between the two. One's more accountability focused, one's more about very results driven, to get a result to move them into that next accountability focus phase, if you like, of the program.
Okay. So you're talking about mindset and nutrition and accountability and goal setting and all these additional stuff. How are we delivering this stuff? Is it via video or text or an app? Or is it a mixture of different things, or downloads or PDF docs? How should we be delivering these kind of contents?
Again, it should always be client driven. If you've got older clients, you might scare them off by giving them an app straight away. So I wouldn't bother giving them an app straight away. For the majority of people though, we tend to use apps. Obviously we use PT Distinction for what we do. And we use that for both in-person clients, hybrid, which is what we normally do with them, or online clients. Normally inside that app, we'll have a mix of different things inside there. So we'll use interactive forms. We'll use PDFs and videos for the most part for lessons. I personally like videos because it has a bit more of a personal touch of it. And it also means that somebody can listen to it as well as watch it. So whenever you're thinking about doing videos inside a program to deliver to a client, always think about, it's not just about what they can watch, because not everybody's always going to watch it. A bit different now because not traveling, but think about on the commute. A lot of people might want to put their headphones in and listen to a lesson you're talking about on the commute. So you want to be in a position where they can both listen and watch to understand what they need to do. Then always, whatever you do, whatever PDF you send through, whatever video you do for it, there needs to be something there for them to check in on, something for them to action. Every single thing should have an action. To me, if you're just giving somebody some information and you don't ask them to action something from that, it's a pointless thing, because it's not actually going to help them get towards their goals. Unless we actually tell them to do something and we hold them accountable to doing it, then it's not really going to do anything. Like, it needs to be there. So an example might be, let's take a meal thing. Let's say we want to try and improve somebody's breakfast, for example. So that might be a little video of the coach on there saying, hey, this week we're going to focus on our breakfast. We want to try and look at different ways to get a good balanced breakfast inside there. So I've just sent you through a PDF, or you can look at the PDF below, or depending how you want to send it, I've just sent you through a PDF On that PDF, there's some dead basic hand portions for you to follow and some different foods you can choose from. And what I like to do is build up 3 go-to breakfast meals for me out of those guides there. Using those hand portions, I want you to write them into this form that I've just put inside your app for me. And then they have to go away and think about it and do it in. So their check-in basically is like, okay, I'm actioning these things here. And then all you're going to say after that in your next video might be, okay, cool. Now you've built your 3 breakfasts. For this next week, what I'd like you to do is use these 3 go-to breakfasts for your meals of the next week. So go shopping, use that as your shopping list, and take some photos of it for me for each day and send it. And that can be done anything. It can be done Facebook if you want it to be. It can be done on WhatsApp. It doesn't really matter how this gets delivered. But that approach allows you to deliver it in a way that's you can engage with them. They can listen to it as well as watch it. But also it means you're giving them something to action and something to check in with them to hold them accountable as well. And I think as long as you do those 3 things, you'll be in good stead to get results from them.
Okay, so if we look at the online side of things, you're seeing these personal trainers sat on beaches on their laptop, chilling, enjoying the sun, let's say in Thailand. And how much of the program should be automated so you can live a life like that, and how much should actually be manual, where you're actually having to do the work to check in with them or do one-to-one consultations and stuff? Is a specific percentage for each aspect of the program?
Yes, there is. Things can be automated, and things where in certain areas should be automated. Again, it comes down again to your client. Like the more you understand your client avatar, depending on how much you can do. There's certain type of clients you can work with who are well targeted, where you can have very highly automated programs where you can be completely hands off. And honestly, there's nothing too wrong with that, as long as you're clear that's what you're offering to your clients. There's nothing wrong with that. I think to get the best results and to sell at a decent level, like a decent value for your program, then you need to have some interaction with them. Now, if you have the right systems in place, you don't have to spend a lot of time to do that. So I'm going to use PT Distinction as an example here of how you could approach something like this if you want to be this online trainer who's got this kind of time freedom. So the first thing I would look at is, what do you do repeatedly for every single client? So that might be, for example, if we start at the beginning, we sign them up so they take a payment. So that payment there, like if you're taking that over the phone, you want to automate it, then if you're not doing sales calls, for example, then you have it on your website. There should be a way to process payments on your website so they can take it. So after that payment's taken, what happens next? Well, I add them into my PT Distinction system. Okay, so why add it in manually? How can we automate that? So we can have sign-up forms, so we can bring them into this other system. So if we can automate that, happy days. At that point, once they're in there, what stuff do we give every single client to do? So we give them PARQs, informed consents, maybe. We might have a goal setting form. Every client we might want to track results for. All these things that we do consistently across all clients should be automated, because it's not going to make a difference whether you add it in manually or a computer adds it in for you or whatever. So these things should be consistent over that. The next step comes down again to knowing your client. Now, if you have a broad spectrum of clients, this can be a bit trickier, because realistically, the only way you're going to know exactly what to give to your client, if you've got a broad spectrum of them, is to go and chat to them. So if I was to talk to you about a training program compared to talking to my dad, for example, there'll be 2 very different programs because of your experience and everything you've done in the past compared to what my dad's done, his experience, he's technically still got angina and all that kind of stuff. It's a very different program. However, if I just specialized on helping people over the age of 60 with angina, then it's a very different process, because I know, generally speaking, where my client is starting from when they sign up, because that's how marketed them to bring them in at that stage. I also know where they're going to be, hopefully after say 8 weeks or 12 weeks time within my program. So because of that, I can build this blueprint out of things that I know they need to go through in order to get the best results for them. Once I've built out that blueprint, I can then automatically deliver most of that. So I can deliver things like the PDFs, the videos, the check-ins, all this kind of stuff can be completely automated if you have the right software for it. Obviously, PT Distinction can do that, but there's other ways to do it as well. So you can automate all this stuff. That can go out to them. Where PT Distinction, I think, has an edge over, say, using something like Google Forms and Google Sheets and things like that, is basically the ability for you to quickly adapt that. So let's say you have those kind of things set up and you need to offer a workout program to this particular client and they've got knee issues, so they can't maybe do squats, for example. You can have pre-made up programs that are already periodized and pre-set up. And all you do is check one box and tick another box to swap that around. And you've got a customized program. You can then go in there and tweak it even more. So when you have those kind of systems in place, to tweak and adapt a program for a client is very quick and easy. It literally take you a few minutes to adapt it. You can do exactly the same thing on the nutrition side, exactly the same thing on the mindset side or any other coaching you want to offer by actually splitting these up into small mini templates. We call them groups inside PT Distinction because it gives lots of power and flexibility. But you have these things set up and all you'll do is swap those out for the client. So it allows you to quickly adapt stuff for them. And that way you can have a very customized program that will only take you a few minutes to do. To give you some context, I roughly had at any given time around 100 to 120 clients. It'll take me around 4 hours a week to manage all of them, and they are customized programs. Just to give you some context, when you have the right systems in place and you have a targeted audience that you want to work with, that's the key. If you really want to do that, you need a bit more of a targeted audience to do it, a targeted kind of client, if you like, to do it at that level. And in all honesty, working on the beach with a laptop's not as fun as you make out to be. The sun glare and the sand in your keypad, it's not the best.
Okay, so thinking about it then, for people, let's say my situation, we've got the gym here in Cardiff. We're thinking of launching this online program. Yes, we can have the exact same program for both, but then if we're giving this online program to the people in Cardiff, we also need to be incorporating the gym side of stuff into it. So like you say, splitting them up, they can be almost the same, but then you have to consider that target audience. This target audience is based nowhere near Cardiff, so they won't be coming to the gym. So we don't need to talk about any gym stuff, where these people are based in the gym. So in that program, we have to be talking about turning up to the gym, where they're going to park, when they meet their coaches and so forth. So like you say, make sure your program talks to specific people. And
exactly.
Even if you have 2 or 3 different programs for 2 or 3 different people, it doesn't matter, but just make sure it fits each demographic. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't just have to have one. Like you can have different versions of the same program. And the advantage is sometimes there'll be some similarities between it all. So if we take your example there of having an online only version and a gym version or a hybrid version, if you like, that's a good example of how that could work. The principle of the program could still remain the same. The only real difference would be the onboarding will be slightly different because, like you mentioned, where to park, how to, all that kind of stuff inside there. How to turn before your terms will be different, like cancelled sessions, how that's going to work. Also things like how you're going to book in for your sessions. So for example, if you're using an app, how do you introduce that app to them? Do you do that straight away so they have 2 at the same time, or do you integrate it somehow, or how does that process work? So just thinking about those things and those changes inside there. But in principle, the actual program itself could remain identical. And then if you wanted to split it up further from there, you could have 3 or 4 different versions of the same program that you can then drop in. So if you've got someone in a different position, so say, for example, if you had a client that signed up who you knew when they first came to your gym that they're really comfortable with certain, they've trained for a long time. They've been training for like 5 years plus regularly for, 4 to 5 days a week for however long, 5 years or so. If that's the case, you're going to offer them something different to somebody that hasn't. So you can have different versions of those programs set up, and you can do exactly the same with the nutrition as well. You do exactly the same with the mindset side of it, the coaching side of it as well. So there's nothing wrong with having different versions of it, but in order to have the most optimal system, it needs to be very client-centric, and it should be something you can adapt very quickly. So just understanding who your clients are or possible variations of those clients are is going to really speed up that process and give you the ability to scale with it.
So we've talked about the program. Let's talk about something that we specialize in and see what your aspect is. When you've got this program set up now, let's say it's through PT Distinction, they've asked you and Jed to kind of set up the whole program for them. How do they go about finding people to come on to these programs, or how do they find people to sell these programs to?
Was this really good company called Fit Pro Lead Gen that they should go and speak to. So it does depend. It does depend again on the situation they're in and who they're actually targeting. A lot of the time when we work with people on this, because we actually get them to dig down quite deep and understand who their client is in order for us to find out the best type of approach or to set up their programs for them, they tend to have a good idea of who they want to target anyway, and that really helps with the marketing side of it. So one of the things I always encourage people to do is to really dig deep, like super, super deep, and understand who their clients are, understand where they're starting from, where they want to go to, so you can understand a bit more about their language and you can speak in their way. And then also understanding where they kind of hang out as well. So looking at like what things do they read, who do they hang around with, who do they follow, who do they engage with, like even things you might not think are necessarily related to fitness. It doesn't really matter. It's just understanding literally who this person is inside out. Like they should be like your best friend. That's the way I look at it. Like know this person like they are literally your best friend or your husband or your wife or your partner or whatever. Like if you know them that intimately, it's going to make it so much easier in order to market to them. Once you get to that point, putting out decent content is a good way to start. Like there's always this kind of mix, isn't it, between a lot of people always argue about, you should go organic or you should go paid when it comes to marketing. But I think a good mix of both is really important. And I think to start off with, understanding your client and having to go putting out some of these ideas and this information and content out there, as long as you put it out the places where they hang out, you'll start to attract these people because you're talking in their way, you're talking about their language. And that's what we're trying to recommend to people if you're going to do it, to go out and do that. So start talking in that way and actually do the same thing in your content that you put out there that you kind of do inside your programs. So earlier on, I mentioned about, you give somebody some information and you try and help them to find a way to action that. I think every bit of content you should put out there shouldn't just be information alone. It should have some kind of call to action to it. Now that doesn't necessarily mean, go and buy my stuff. What it might be is like, I don't know, really poor example, but here we go for an example. Drinking 2.5 liters of water a day is what you should be having as a tip or some advice or something. How much water have you had today? Let me know in the comments. To me, that's a call to action. It's engaging with people. And that's what we want to try and do. Engage with people and actively want to try and help people. And I think if you approach it that way, it's like, I understand my client, I really want to help them, and just go out there, put information out there to help them, you will start to attract these people in. And once you've done that, you can then start having these conversations and moving them into your programs, bring them into something like a Facebook group where you can help support them inside there a bit more than what you could do through other programs. As an example, there's lots of different ways to do it, but that's generally the way we tend to recommend to start off with. If you have no idea what to do, that's what I would do to start off with. Just find out as much about your client as possible and just generally want to go out there and help them and put information out in the places where they hang out. That's what I would do.
It makes total sense. It's like you say, you almost need to be talking to them like, wow, how does that guy know what's going on in my head? So whatever they read from you, your sales pages, your emails, your social media posts, what you're saying is what's going on in their head. So they're reading it and like, wow, that is, how does this guy know this stuff? How does he know what is actually going on in my head? And then you're like putting those pointers out. How many liters of water have you got? 2. That's built a small connection between you and this person. They've jumped over that one hurdle. And the more connections you build, the closer and closer and closer and closer you get until that moment where they think, you know what, I need to lose weight. And the first person that comes into their head because they've jumped through all those hoops and they've engaged with you is you. So when they think, I need to lose some weight, let's talk straight to Dave straight away. And because they're that close to you, because they've gone through all that way, is good. And then, like you said, the battle between organic and paid. Best example is a fish pond. There's no water coming into this fish pond. You are just in this fish pond with all these other fish. By the time you've fished 5 or 6 weeks in, you've taken all the fish that you need. The rest of the fish you can't have. So you've got nothing left in the pond. That's when you turn your ads on and you start adding new fish into the pond so you can start fishing again. So, you know what I mean? Organic is great. Ads is great, but a mixture of both is what you need to then beat those hurdles and become they want to work with you in the end.
Yeah, 100%. I think there has to be a mix. I think there does have to be a mix to have it effectively as well. I think there has to be a good mix of it, and it's same with advertising as well. One of the most popular ways, again, it depends on the type of programs that you're running, I guess, as well. But one of the most popular ways we've actually seen people make sales is not necessarily to run ads directly to their programs. What we've actually seen most success with is actually to run people into, well, either two actually, run people into a community, so like a community group or something like that, or to run them into, from an online point of view anyway, to we have like a 5-day lead magnet we tend to recommend to people if no one has any idea what they want to do. We have this kind of 5-day lead magnet which we talk about quite a lot, and the idea is that over those 5 days you have a short video that they can check in and engage with to try and get to know, like, and trust you a bit more. And by the end of it, they'll then move on to your flagship program and purchase it from you, because it allows you to have all those extra levels of contact with them as well, isn't it? They're the most successful lads we tend to see get bigger conversions, because it's not about just, here's this, buy this. It's like, okay, here we are, this is what we're doing, come and join us in our pond, where we'll feed you, we'll look after you, we'll do whatever. And if you want to actually, go to the big pond on the other side and play with the big fishes, we'll show you how to do that. But it's going to cost you a bit to get out of that pond and jump in the other one. Yeah, that's what we see generally see the most success with, especially in the early days.
Have you got any final tips then on creating this program, from what to include or suggestions on length or what type of resources and content? Have you got any final tips for us?
Yeah, so the biggest tip will be like what I'll kind of reiterate loads of times over this, is just understand who your client is. Like, you must understand who your client is and keep it very client centric. It has to be about them. That's what's going to get them the best results. The next biggest tip would be make sure it's simple. Like, don't overcomplicate it. One of the hardest things I think a lot of coaches struggle with is a certain level of empathy and a bit of ego as well. It's very easy for us as coaches to think, I know all this, they need to know all this in order to get the best result. That's not the case. They don't need to know all that information. You need to know it. It's your job to know it, not theirs. It's their job to implement it to get a result. And that's all it needs to be. It needs to be the simplest, minimal amount of stuff you can get them to do in order to get the best result possible for them. That's the most important thing. So they're the two main things I would think of. And then when it comes to delivering the content, make sure that whatever systems you use, again, it's the simplest that it can be for them. So you don't have to overcomplicate it. Don't have lots of different things going off everywhere all the time and confusing people. They have to log in different areas. Like, you don't want that. You want to try and consolidate it into one place so it's simple and easy for them to follow. I think if you can tackle those three things within your program delivery, it will be a much better system, much better program for you to deliver.
Nice. Okay. So let's learn a little bit about you quickly before we finish then. So PT Distinction is a coaching app. So how are you different to PT Distinction, or what is it you actually do then?
So to give you like a bit of a background of how I got involved with PT Distinction, as I mentioned earlier, I started off with a gym, a studio, moved into going hybrid, then went online, ran the online stuff, went to loads of different softwares actually. I even built some of my own stuff using Google Sheets and Google Forms and all that kind of thing. And eventually found PT Distinction, started working with them. I really enjoyed it because I'm a bit of a tech geek. Like, I love technology and I love computers and all that kind of stuff. So I found with PT Distinction, I could manipulate it and make it do pretty much anything I wanted to. So because of that, I stuck with it and I started doing things with it. And then they started a Facebook group many moons ago. Got invited into the group as everyone else did who was a trainer using PT Distinction, and started talking about that. And then eventually Tim, who owns PT Distinction, said, I didn't even realize you could do that with our own software. Like, he saw a post I put up inside their commentary that I put up. We started talking from there, and we started running something called the PT Distinction Masterclasses, where they brought me in to run these masterclasses to help trainers set up PTD and make the most of it. And then from that, basically, someone approached me and said, do you want to set up my account for me? Like, can you go in and do it? And I was like, oh yeah, I'll just go and help you. And the next thing I know is they PayPal me some money over to say thanks for doing it. And that's kind of how this Done For You service started, and everything kind of grew from there. So when that grew, I spoke to Tim at PTD and said, look, this is what's happening. They're asking me to do this. So we decided that I would still do the support stuff for PT Distinction. So I'll support in their Facebook group, do some of their tech support for them, and help out with the masterclasses, the PT Distinction University, all their side, tech side of it. And then we'd run PTD Ninja as a separate entity whose job it is basically to help set up and basically master PT Distinction with their PT business in order to make the most of the software and their business using PT Distinction. So that's basically the difference. One's a support service, the other one's actually the app. That's the best way to look at it.
Nice. And if people want to find out more about what it is you actually offer with PTD Ninja itself, where do they come and find out a little bit more about you?
So the best place is probably our website, which is ptdninja.com. So pretty easy to remember that one. Or if you want to find out a little bit more about kind of what we do and how we help people and just get some help and support from us, check out the PT Distinction Facebook group as well. That's a good place to go. We tend to hang around there all the time. So yeah, either of them too.
Perfect, mate. I appreciate your last 50 minutes. I guess anyone listen to this now is considering getting this program built. Like you say, just get it out, put it in the steps, keep it simple, and then try and put it to your clients in a simple format so they can learn from it.
Yeah, definitely. And there's like, if I can, I'll try and get some resources and stuff for you that you can use with your guys that you can maybe download or whatever, so you can have a look at how you can actually lay those out. Obviously, part of the podcast and actually show you some things, but I can definitely send you some stuff you can utilize if you want to.
I appreciate it, and I'll speak to you. I'll speak to you tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, I'll speak to you tomorrow. So no worries, man.
So that was Ash from PT Distinction Ninja, and it was a great insight to hear his thoughts about what goes into a successful program. After all, he sets these things up constantly for other fitness business owners, so he gets a great insight to what they want and what they need for the program itself. If you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet either, make sure that by clicking that big red button below. And also, if you haven't checked out some of the other previous videos, or you want to check out yesterday's video or last week's videos, make sure to click these videos here. Anyway, I'll see you all tomorrow. Cheers.